NBA DFS show with Jon Impemba and James Grande.
What is going on, FA Nation? Jon Impemba here with James Grande. Welcome to the Fantasy Alarm NBA DFS Playbook Show. It is Friday. It is the end of the work week. TGIF to you, good sir. We have 9 games here on tonight's main slate. How are we doing today, sir?
You know, one of those days. But we are here. It is Friday. TGIF to you and to everyone out there. It's an interesting slate. A lot of the news that we are kind of like talking through last night seems to be on schedule to play.
Right.
Şengün going through shoot around, Zion going through shoot around. Indiana is obviously a big question mark. They have a lot of injury designations. I think that is Indiana in a nutshell. They always have a lot of injury designations. Midday downgrade to Rudy Gobert. But there has nothing real of like true significance yet. We know it's the NBA. There's literally 9 games on a main slate. It is never safe to say that there hasn't been any significant news, but pretty status quo right now. Looking forward to it. Fun slate. Some big game totals tonight.
Yeah, we have 2 games with totals up over 240 in this one, actually. 248, rather, sorry, with Phoenix and Atlanta and Sacramento, Indiana here, just kind of leading the way when it comes to game totals for this main slate here today. When it comes to the roster share early on in today, I actually expected to see maybe a little bit more of like clear chalk, come through. I know we're waiting on the more recent update and to come, and maybe that will sort of shift and change some things around. But this morning when I was looking at some of the ownership here, I thought for sure we would see a lot of Phoenix, Atlanta, Sacramento, Golden State. Instead, I'm looking at Fred VanVleet on DraftKings as like the highest rostered player on the slate. Someone that you and I actually talked about last night. It's like, why would we play Fred VanVleet when Jalen Green's like right there? And yeah, there's the slate. Everyone looks, at least for now, like Jalen Green. We have 16.5 point spread. We can't play guys in blowouts, can we? Oh, well, we can, because Lou Dort and Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, 2 guys that are getting some of the highest ownership on tonight's slate. So it's going to be super interesting to see where these, where the builds are going today. If like the majority, at least early on, is fading this 248 game total games with 3-point spreads. It doesn't really make much sense to me.
I feel like that's kind of been something that we've gotten used to. And shout out Cam the Man, and shout out to Embiid. Shout out to you, Albert. Hello to you, my friend. We've seen this before though. And I think it's in games where like you have situations where Trae Young, Kevin Durant, Devin Booker are all 9K. And when you don't have like elite value and like the 3K value that you need, you can't really play 2 of those guys like all too comfortably. You can, but like not all too comfortably. So, I think some people are missing out on not playing games with 248 totals, but I digress, and that's better for us if they don't.
That's kind of how I feel about it as well. Just kind of giving a rundown of the slate here, and we appreciate you all tuning in. If you could throw us a like on today's show, throw some comments in the chat. We're obviously here to help you guys out. We'll answer them. We'll throw them on the screen, and we'll get a lineup built here at the end of today's show as well. But kicking us off, Clippers, Detroit, Pistons here. Pistons are at home getting 12. That's a 238.5 game total. We have Miami versus Washington. Washington getting 8 at home. 228 total there. Marvin Bagley out tonight for the Wizards. So maybe more Daniel Gafford in your future in this matchup. Phoenix Suns versus Atlanta Hawks, as we mentioned. Atlanta's a 3.5 point home underdog. 249.5 now, up from the 247.5 that it opened at. Sacramento, Indiana on the second leg of a back-to-back here. They're 4-point home underdogs. 248 total there. Toronto, Houston. That spread open with Houston -6. Is now Houston -4.5. The total is up to 232 there, so that's kind of an interesting thing to watch for. Golden State, Memphis at home getting 8.5, 224.5 total in that one. Orlando, Minnesota, Minnesota's a 6.5-point home favorite. That total is just 213. It's a slate low. Gotta watch the Rudy Gobert news in that one, as he was a midday downgrade as questionable. And then we have Charlotte OKC. That one's at a 15.5-point spread. We saw the Boston Celtics as 15-point home favorites lose outright last night to the Los Angeles Lakers. We'll see if Charlotte's able to pull off a miracle there, but that's a 225 total. And then our last game on the slate, New Orleans versus San Antonio. San Antonio getting 8.5 as a home underdog, 233.5 total.
Yeah, I heard the interest in the Toronto-Houston line in your voice. I would assume that has to do with everyone expecting quickly Pirtle, Barrett to potentially return, at least two of those guys. So that would be my opinion on it. Clippers getting Paul George back. So we've now seen that line bet up to 12.5. Detroit, they're Detroit. Yeah, I don't really have much else to add. 2 games with 248 totals. I want all of, and seemingly the field does not. So better for us there, John.
At least for now, it seems like better for us, right? We'll start off at the point guard position. SGA is 10-3. He's also getting 32% of the ownership here today. So I guess fade at your own risk. Charlotte is the best matchup for point guards basically in the NBA. We also know that SGA doesn't need 40 minutes to go for 60 fantasy points. We've seen him do that this year. 31 actual and 29 minutes against Detroit in their loss a couple of games ago. They beat San Antonio by 30. He had 61 fantasy points in 29 minutes there. So don't need a full run for SGA for him to have a ceiling game. But as we alluded to, just below him for a few hundred cheaper dollars, Devin Booker's 99, Trae Young is 96. You and I both did an underdog article today. You did a sleeper article. Trae Young was the cover of 2 of those 3 pieces here today. We're obviously high on Trae Young tonight at $9,600. Again, he's coming off of 3 straight 30-point games, 3 straight games of over 30-plus minutes since coming back from his concussion. 30, 30, and 26 actual double-digit assists in all those games here. Like, why not just pivot? Why not just save $700 and get a guy that nobody is playing, seemingly, compared to SGA here tonight?
So I don't disagree. And again, I understand why the field's getting to SGA. If anyone whoever listened to the previous show heard me talk about the nature of the blowout in the NBA right now, and how I am scrubbing it from my mind in terms of these games, because again, does not matter apparently. Like, we are in January, we are in February. The best games on the board seemingly are going to have blowouts. The games that we don't expect are not. It's just random at this point in January, in February, like the NBA grueling schedule, like looking towards the All-Star break. People are looking towards the trade deadline. Like, you don't know. We don't have any inkling on what is going through any of these teams' minds. None. Zero. We are looking at numbers and looking at things. What I can tell you is, based on the numbers I'm looking at, is SGA has 1.7 fantasy points a minute on the year without Jalen Williams. And Charlotte plays their guys 40 minutes. So if those 40 minutes of starters are decent enough to stay competitive,
sure,
we're going to get a ceiling game out of SGA. It's almost impossible to see that.
Like I was saying, you don't even need the minutes. He gave you 16-29 for San Antonio. He's just that guy, right? So
yeah. So like, I'm in agreement where you look at the Phoenix Atlanta game and it's clearly the better environment overall. Almost 250. It's been bet up to almost 250 points.
Yeah.
Atlanta in the last 15 games, I just wanted to just check. I didn't want to broaden it to January sample, but just 15 game sample. Atlanta's second in the NBA in pace, only behind the Lakers. Over that span, they're 24th in defense. Like, this is as good of a spot as it's going to get for in this game. Like, just in general, I know Phoenix is a pace down spot for Atlanta, but they're an elite offense. So to keep up with, over that span, the second rated offense in the league, the Phoenix Suns, like, Atlanta's going to have to score as well. So I'm good with pivoting. I'm also saying I'm also good on this slate eating SGA chalk, knowing that if Charlotte can keep it in that ballpark of if Charlotte hovers around 10 points, right? Yep. SGA has that sub pattern where he won't return until basically the 6-minute mark in the fourth quarter, right?
Yeah.
What number do you think Charlotte has to be at for him to come back in the game?
8, 7, something like that.
They score back-to-back baskets to cut
Yeah.
it to 12.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, something like
Timeout,
that.
Dagnall timeout, just
Quick timeout. Yeah.
Shea get in the game.
The one thing with SGA, which I always find interesting, we talk a lot about rotations, especially first quarter rotations. We you and I do a lot of the prop stuff. SGA's first quarter prop is the highest of anybody on the slate. It's at 10.5 points for the first quarter.
Well,
I mean, like it should. Devin Booker also plays the entire first quarter. His is only 8.5.
8.5,
Right? So like it's a whole bucket more for SGA on the Vegas odds, and it's like a minus 130 on the over, right? So they're basically telling you that SGA is going out there and scoring 12 points, in the first quarter minimum here against Charlotte. If you feel tempted enough to take that matchup for him tonight. Again, I don't think you can really go wrong with any of the top 3 guards here of Young, Booker, or SGA. Perfectly fine plugging any, all, or 2 of in your lineups tonight because there's some value we could play. If we go a little bit further down, though, I mean, no disrespect to Steph Curry, back-to-back 60 fantasy point games. Yes, I know one of those was the overtime game against the Lakers. But 2 overtime games, but 35 minutes against Philly, 37, 8, and 7. He gave you 30 actual points against Sacramento the game before that. Draymond Green, assuming he is good tonight. I know you had a little tag on him here for today. He's running the offense, and you're seeing old school Steph Curry play right now. So, certainly can pay off the $9,400 with a ceiling of the other 3 that are above him. Definitely for me, a clear-cut tier. And then you go down into that 8K range where you have the Aaron Fox in a great matchup. My problem, I think, here now is, the Pacers are on the second leg of a back-to-back, and they listed like everybody questionable. If everybody ends up sitting tonight, there's no hope for, I don't think, I guess we can't say no hope, but it feels like there'd be very slim chances of Indiana hanging in this one.
Well, again, I'm not going there. I will not. I'm not. I'm telling you, I'm taking a stand. We have seen recently Sacramento play the Memphis Grizzlies, and the Memphis Grizzlies were winning that game in the fourth quarter, even with Domantas Sabonis having 30 rebounds. And we've seen the Kings blow a 22-point fourth quarter lead with 8 minutes left. And they almost did it again against Dallas who in that game was on the second leg of a back-to-back the night after Luka went for 73.
Yeah.
I'm not saying like Indiana, if Halliburton is out, they have like anybody that resembles Luka, but like Indiana's also the number 1 rated offense in the NBA right now. So I think that they would be able to keep this game competitive. Sacramento's also not a good defensive team. So if they are shorthanded, if there's no Halliburton, we know that means fresh leg McConnell's going to be in there for running the offense for 24 minutes. We know Nembhard's going to be extended. I think Indiana still has the legs to stay competitive in this game.
Yeah, I mean, we'll see. I mean, you're not wrong. Like we've seen them, especially the Kings, give up leads. I think I just got to see what the starting lineup ends up being if like Halliburton's out, Nembhard's out, Matherin's out, Jalen Smith's out, Turner's out. Is Shepherd hanging in here against Sacramento? I mean,
been good.
Therese Walker hanging in here against Sacramento. I mean, I guess we'll have to find out there. More so in the mid-tier range here. You do have Harden obviously against Detroit at $8,800. You could have quickly McCollum, chalk monster Van Vliet at $6,900. You get the Miami guards, which some people are high on tonight against the Wizards. I still like Bradley Beal as a tournament dart throw. Again, no one's really playing this game. $6,500 for him still feels pretty good. How are you feeling about the mid-tier range here?
I like Harden. I think Paul George is still going to be limited. I'm not digging on the Van Vliet chalk personally. We just got a ownership update. Where do we have Mr. Van Vliet? Let's look. Does Freddie have the same ownership as he did this morning?
He does.
He does. I'm not. We did like a 5-minute discussion on this, right?
Yeah.
On the show, where like Jalen Green is obviously the sample is bigger for Van Vliet, right? Versus like the entire season sample has been better for Van Vliet than it has for Jalen Green, undoubtedly. I think Jalen Green's just been significantly better when you're talking about a guy scoring 30 plus actual in 3 of his last 4 games. The minutes seem more secure for Jalen Green right now. So that's the way that I'm personally leaning. I'd rather play lower owned Jalen Green with multi-position eligibility than I would a chalky Fred VanVleet, who we know this isn't a slight at VanVleet. We know he has an insane ceiling.
Yeah.
But like when Jalen Green is doing this, and when the offense flows through Şengün the way it does, there are games where he's not going to have 14 assists, right? And that's obviously
my man took 4 shots that game. I mean, what happened, right? So Jalen Green getting 50% of the rostership of Van Vliet. Jesus, can't say his name. Van Vliet tonight. I'd rather get Jalen Green in my lineup for sure at $100 cheaper. I don't really care for much of the 8K after De'Aaron Fox. I mean, Harden's fine again. That's fine. He's good. He's fine. I'm spending up, so it's hard for me to find a way to get Harden in those lineups. You know, Edwards in a bad matchup, lowest game total on the board. DeJounte is good, you know, but he's shooting guard, point guard. We'll talk about him in a moment, but obviously DeJounte can get into some lineups. And 4% is on Trae Young tonight. No one's playing Atlanta here. So anybody else here in the mid-tier for you?
In the mid-tier, mild interest in the Spurs guys, Devin Vassell and Trey Jones, with Keldon Johnson being out. You know, Vassell sits at about 1 fantasy point per minute with Keldon Johnson off the floor this year. Trey Jones sits at about 1 fantasy point per minute with Keldon Johnson off the floor this year. So I'm okay with both of those Spurs. I think it helps San Antonio being at home. The spread is relatively low, 8.5, like 233 game total. It's a pretty good game environment. So I like both Spurs guys. TBD on like Nembar, the Indiana backcourt too, because if Halliburton's out, like all systems go for me for Nembhard.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, McConnell's even cheaper now at 48 as well. You know, certainly you mentioned Fultz this morning. I mean, at the price point, the matchup just take you off him though?
Yes, with Conley back, it does a little bit. I mean, he is a very solid usage guy. He's a very solid peripheral guy. And I think we've seen that. Like he's coexisting with Franz, with Paolo, with Wendell Carter. Like they're at full strength again. And we're seeing in these games, well, he can kind of stuff the stat sheet. So not necessarily completely off, but I'm okay if like the matchup does kind of scare you off a little bit.
Yep. We have the Memphis guys here. We'll see what a lineup looks for them. You know, they have some guys that could maybe come back. If they don't, you know who the usual suspects are going to be there. And then Can the Man wants to know, Josh Richardson, a value pivot off of Lou Dort, who's getting a ton of value here tonight. Thoughts on the Dort ownership, 30%? And then what Richardson's been doing in a spot against the Wizards now.
I mean, we've talked like Lou Dort is just such a low floor play. Like regardless of, and we've been down this road. I remember the last chalk Lou Dort game, he gave us like 25 fantasy points, of course, right? Because that's how life works, where you're like, why would I want to play a guy who has this low of a floor? And that guy with the low floor gives you like what you need and more. And I get it, 3,900, and I get it. 36 minutes last game. Like if you get that out of Lou Dort, that's fantastic.
11 shots, 1 of 6 from 3. If he hits a couple more threes, you're cooking. So
with Isaiah Joe and Jalen Williams off the floor this year, John.
Yep.
Lou Dort has the third, and this is OKC. So they played like 20 people this year, right? He has the third lowest fantasy point per minute output, 0.64 So 0.6 fantasy point per minute guy is getting 30% ownership. 14% usage rate. 14.
Yeah.
That's lower than Kenrich Williams. That is not a good company. Not that Kenrich Williams is a bad player. Kenrich Williams is move without the ball, gonna do the dirty work kind of guy. And so
if we're doing value today, I think we talked about this last night. Why not take the guy that's gonna shoot?
I also think there's another value at that position that the Keldon Johnson news opened up that we can get to.
Sure.
But I do agree on the Wiggins front, and I would play Josh Richardson over Dort. It's a better matchup for Richardson. Wizards are obviously the second worst defense in the NBA this year. So yes, there's no Duncan Robinson. So the minutes have been secure for Josh Richardson over the last couple of games, 24, 24, 27, the last three. Obviously, the position eligibility kind of sucks for Josh Richardson, that he's just point guard only. Now you're essentially using SGA or Richardson or Trey at your just two guard spots, Claude Buck, right? So that kind of sucks, but I would definitely be interested in a Richardson pivot because we talked about why was he 3,100? Why is he 3,500? Things like this, I get it that he had to kind of fall out of the rotation, but things have changed. He's played well while nobody else really has.
Right.
And so there's not going to be this sudden shift. Good matchup against Washington. I'm in on Josh Richardson.
Yep, I agree with you. Moving out to shooting guard here. Again, don't need to go into detail of why Devin Booker's a good play here today. You can just look at his numbers, look at the matchup, look at the fact that nobody is playing him to know that there's some great tournament potential for this game in general. DeJounte Murray, again, $8,100. Sort of everything I just said is kind of holding true. He's coming off of a 45 fantasy point game. Has a 60 burger on his plate when Trey was out. 44, 38, 45 the last three. $8,100 for a guy like this in this matchup feels far too cheap. So we're happy to continue to sort of plug those two guys in at the top. Going to the mid tier, if you look at the playbook here, there's only one guy listed in the mid tier at shooting guard because I didn't feel the need to throw anybody else in there. He's right here. Yeah. Why would you not play anybody? Why would you play anybody else?
Yeah, I mean, especially when you talk it through, Paul George likely to be limited in that game, just given what the groin injury has done to him. Brandon Ingram now has Zion back, and sure, we know Brandon Ingram has a ceiling, but you're also getting Jalen Green for $900 cheaper. RJ Barrett, we don't even know if he's going to play. Really tough spot against Houston in general. Brandon Miller has been super inconsistent. I will say there's one thing that OKC does bad defensively, and that's allow threes. They allow the 9th most threes per game this year. So that could lead to more Brandon Miller threes. I think it leads to someone else's threes, personally today, but it is really Jalen Green and then the rest of the field, and then just move down to the next tier because I don't have much interest there either.
I agree with you. I mean, Jalen Green in the mid tier for me. We talked to top guys, and you go down to value. Kevin Huerter is getting a ton of love. The minutes have obviously been there. The shooting's there. And hey, again, 248 game total. Why wouldn't you want exposure to one of these games here? Huerter is the one of the two top spends that are getting our top total games getting the love. He and Bradley Beal, I guess if you're picking two guys from those four teams getting ownership here tonight. Beal's still under 20%. Huerter's coming in around 30. $5,100 for a guy that has seemingly found the shooting stroke. You know he's going to shoot threes. The Pacers actually have decent numbers in terms of 3-pointers allowed per game, but we also just saw the Celtics bury a whole bunch of threes on them. So, volume shooting changes the amount of threes you allow per game, and the Kings are going to shoot a lot of threes tonight.
It's funny because I looked at that same thing today and I was shocked. They're number one in terms of fewest 3-point shots made or allowed. They're also number one in opponent field goal percentage allowed. So wherever inside the arc you want to get, it's hey, here's an open shot.
Yeah.
To your Huerter point, in 12 games this year that he has played 30 plus minutes, John, he's averaging 19, 6, and 5.
He's a good player.
In those games, He's shooting 50+% and 47% from three. It just took him a while, right? He was off to a terrible start. We buried him. We left him for dead. We left him on the side of the road. The team actively trying to trade him. Like,
started
hey,
Chris Duarte over him at times.
That's when it's bad, right? You know, like things are bad when like Chris Duarte starts getting some love. So yeah, I mean, things were not looking good for Kevin Huerter, and things have started to drastically shift. I have a lot of interest. He's really good peripherally, by the way. Really, really good peripherally. Like, even if he's not scoring, which I expect him to, even when he's not scoring like at a really high level, we've seen multiple double-digit rebound games out of him over the last like handful. So Kevin Huerter is chalk that I'm definitely willing to get to.
And to Cam the Man's point there, Kevin Huerter, last time they faced Indy, he had 7 threes in that game. Again, like you look at the season stats, but sometimes the teams you face also, dictate sort of what your seasonal averages are going to be. And in that game, the Kings went 15 for 37 from three, 40% there. And most of that was on Kevin Huerter, who just was unconscious there in that game. When you go below them, there's some usual suspects. Again, I like Norm Powell. There's Dylan Brooks. Trey Murphy is in this range. Gary Trent Jr. at $4,900. So, plenty of shooting guard value. Bilal Coulibaly, it's $4,200. I think I saw, did Shaman get rolled in today?
He did.
Yeah, so that may impact some of Coulibaly here, but as you pointed out, with the new coach, Coulibaly's been getting some run, so maybe he just continues to play 30 minutes.
Well, also, like, what does Washington do after Gafford? Could they elect to? Because you think about Miami, they use Kevin Love, right? Mm-hmm. They could put Kuzma. They can play Kuzma as the backup 5 during the Kevin Love minutes, right? And then you go like Denny at the 4, or I mean, I know they have Patrick Baldwin, and I assume that's who's going to get most of the backup center run. But like, even when I think Muscala was out pre-Bagley trade, or it was Gafford was out and Bagley was center, they were still barely like giving Patrick Baldwin much run. So I don't think like the trust is necessarily there. So I would expect some small ball Kuzma 5, and then you get Coulibaly. Even with Poole in, I think Coulibaly is still going to play around 29 to 31 minutes, and then it just depends if the game blows out, you get extended, right? You'll get Coulibaly up into the probably mid 30s. So, I think the shooting guard value is interesting. I just updated the ownership at FantasyAlarm.com. Coulibaly getting about 6%, right about where Norm Powell is getting, John. So just Cody Martin and Trey Murphy, both value plays getting about 10% as well. Klay Thompson getting 14%. John, thoughts on Klay Thompson at 59?
I guess he's not my favorite. I like a different Warrior tonight, and so does the field.
I think we all like that different Warrior for sure.
Let's go to small forward so we can talk about that individual. At the top, there's Scotty Barnes. I don't have any interest in Scotty Barnes at 9K. I'll play the other 9K players today. Durant, Booker, Trey, Curry. I'm not finding myself getting to Scotty Barnes here. A lot of guys have dual positional eligibility. I mean, most of these guys are power forwards, but Leonard, Siakam, Bridges, Jimmy Butler at $7,800. He's been so good. The matchup's great. Everything's leading to what should be a big Butler day, but as you also mentioned, it could also just be a nothing Butler day.
DeAndre Hunter ruled out.
Well, there you go. Puts in the Sadiq Bey minutes for you.
That's a pretty significant piece. That's a lot more. I mean, not a lot more, but minutes for the wing room in general.
Yeah. Bogdan gets some extra love there.
Yep, all 3 of them for sure. See a lot of love for Jimmy Butler today, John. A lot of love for Jimmy Butler in a lot of different places, and I understand it. Except not a lot of ownership love, but I've seen a lot of people talking up Jimmy Butler tonight. This feels it's obviously a great spot. We obviously know Jimmy Butler, what he does in games against the Washingtons. Like, you look at the games that Jimmy Butler has been really good in lately. Really good Knicks team, really good Suns team, 4 seed in the West Kings team with 2 All-Stars that weren't All-Stars.
Madison Square Garden game.
Madison's like, This is a home game against Washington, who is probably going to have half the team that they have today 7 days from now. Like,
Sure.
so I'm good with getting the Butler if that's where you land. Fine. I think my favorite guy in this tier is probably Miles Bridges, of the group, who's now small forward, power forward, and he's my favorite one of the group on the court, on the
Yep.
NBA floor,
Right.
not in court as you alluded to
No.
this morning. But he's been look at these freaking minutes, dude. I mean,
that's what we love about the Hornets is they're going to play their guys 40 minutes, rain or shine. So
Steve Clifford has basically come out and said, like, the reason this is happening even in blowouts is because I don't trust anyone else.
Yeah, I saw that. We don't have enough talent.
We do not have enough talent, was like the quote. And so even in a 15.5 point spread, you're going to get 36 plus minutes.
If you're JT Thor and your coach says we just don't have enough talent on this team, how does that make you feel?
I mean, probably,
clearly I suck, right?
Yeah, I mean, there's self-reflection needed, I would say. But it's hard for me not to look at the minutes for Bridges, to look at the opportunities for Bridges without LaMelo Ball and Gordon Hayward and Mark Williams. Like, all three of those guys do different things, and Bridges is doing them all. Like, 15 and 10 rebounds the last 2 games, check. 30, 21, 21, 21, 20, 28, 25, 23 actual points the last 8 games, check. 5, 6 assists the last 3 games. Like, he's just checking all the boxes. Makes a lot of 3-pointers. So I'm in on Miles Bridges 85, even though he's not a power forward center anymore for whatever reason. They shifted him to small forward, power forward, because the random game they started him, PJ Washington, and Nick Richards. But yeah, give me Bridges at 8,500.
Yeah, that's good. I like Franz Wagner at $6,900 as well. I think that's a pretty good price for him. Miller 68, Lunch Pail Vince Williams at $6,400, Sadiq Bey 62, and then Jonathan Kuminga. Here he is. They just had his matchup against Memphis in Memphis. So same thing. He went for 20 and 11 for 34 fantasy points in that game. Kuminga is your second projected highest rostered player on tonight's slate. Again, no real surprise there. Do you have any concerns at all for Jonathan Kuminga here tonight?
I don't have much of a reason. I feel like no one has much of a reason to be concerned. Like, we ranted on the pod that he played 39 minutes, and yes, that was without Clay. But, like, what is the scenario? There's no Dario Saric in this game, too.
Right.
So, like, that's another factor where that we didn't even talk about last night. And Dario Saric is, like, other than before last game, had been starting. And he's playing 15 to 23 minutes a game. They are not going to give those minutes to anyone else but Jonathan Kuminga at this point when he's playing this well. So it's just a situation where he continues to ball out, specifically when Draymond Green's been on the floor. Like, obviously, he's playing incredibly well in general. But we talked about it last slate. He had 1.3 fantasy point per minute average when Draymond's been on the floor. That has not changed one bit. And we say that about Steph. Well, Draymond just like that impactful for Steph. Well, he's also that impactful for this guy who is also $3,000 cheaper than Stephen Curry. Really hard not to want to get to Kuminga. 1.25 fantasy points per minute, 25% user rate playing alongside Draymond Green. It's lock and load season on Jonathan Kuminga.
Yeah. Aaron Nesmith at $5,700 looks pretty good, especially if guys end up being ruled out here for Indiana. He could be forced into taking all the shots for this offense here. Andrew Wiggins is another one where the minutes are starting to look nice for him. 38 in that last game, 41 in the double overtime game. But as you mentioned, if there's no Saric, that shortens that rotation up a little bit. He was already playing 30 minutes regardless. So, like, you kind of lock him into that. And now maybe there's more minutes to go around. And he's starting to look good. He's on the trading block. You know, he's giving you some defense. The rebounding is consistent now. You know, he's being wildly efficient, but he's a guy that generally gets to the rim. So, yeah, we talk about that. Guys that score at the basket generally have higher shooting percentages than those that don't. Yeah, he's knocking down his threes, which is good to see. But Kuminga at 5,600. Not Kuminga. Wiggins rather at $5,600. Still a pretty decent play here.
Solid play. I'm not as like bullish on Wiggins as I am Kuminga, and salute to, I think it was our boy who's always getting yelled at by his team, Coach Chris, who shouted Wiggins last slate after we were touting Kuminga, and both of them went nuclear. So shout out to you, Chris. Put me in the game.
Yep.
So yeah, I like Wiggins. Not as bullish as Kuminga, but Wiggins is perfectly fine.
Value small forwards for you?
So obviously TBD on what Memphis does. Tillman is doubtful. I assume that means we get the Jaren Jackson starting 5 with Aldama, Vince Williams, and then Concher, 5th starter TBD, depending on if Luke Kennard suits up or not. But GG Jackson, another 28 minutes. I don't love that he's 5,100, but 29, 30, 29 minutes the last 3 games for GG Jackson. Dude, he just shoots the basketball. He's taken 8+ threes in back-to-back games. He's really good on the glass, so I'm okay if you land on GG Jackson. You mentioned Trey Murphy. He's like kind of not as interesting as he was earlier this morning. Another pivot off of Lou Dort, I think, would definitely just be Cedi Osman, because we've seen this for a pretty long time, that Cedi is a guy that can shoot the basketball at a pretty high level. Only like 37% is solid. I would say if he was around 40%, he'd probably be in the 20s in terms of minutes. He might even be starting over like someone like Justin Champagnie, right? On a night-to-night basis. But no coincidence, like injuries have led to 29 and 28 minutes for Cedi the last 2 games. No Keldon Johnson once again tonight. I just would rather play a lower-owned Cedi. Now, the ownership gap has definitely closed on the two in this recent update. Lou Dort, 27%, Cedi Osman, 20%. So it's not like that's a big discrepancy, but it is a $3,500 Cedi Osman, who didn't play great in that Orlando game. Orlando's a tough matchup.
Yep.
But in the Washington game, 8 for 12 from the floor, 20 actual points. Like that.
We've seen this from Cedi all the way back to his Cavs days. So we know he's always live to kind of pop off there for sure.
Biggest usage bump, by the way, without Keldon Johnson this year. Almost a 4% usage rate increase, up to 20% without Keldon Johnson. That's a 350-minute sample too.
Power forward position, Wemby's $9,300, Kevin Durant $92. Loving some Kevin Durant here tonight, obviously in this matchup against Atlanta. You can always play Wemby. No one's going to sit there and tell you not to. The man's giving you 5x on a night-to-night basis, and we know the ceiling game is coming sooner rather than later. We talked about Kawhi is going to play all the minutes in this game here for the Clippers until they take him off the floor because it's a blowout. You got Siakam, second leg of a back-to-back at 86 on a team that maybe he's by himself here against Sacramento tonight. I actually kind of like Banchero tonight if there's no Rudy Gobert. I think, taking Gobert off the floor is just a changer for that defense in Minnesota.
Yes.
So, look out for that news. You might get a low owned Banchero going for like 50 plus tonight.
There is definite interest. I would say probably Orlando wide, right? Like Franz as well, who's uber cheap. Like both of them are super smash candidates if there's no Gobert, because Towns and Nas are definitely not the same defense. I was trying to look to see what there's only been one game that Gobert's missed. And of course it's the Boston this is a terrible
overtime Celtics game.
It's a terrible sample because you literally have the best team in the NBA as your one game sample, but they did score 127 points in overtime. Of course, right? That's your one game without Rudy. But
you gotta break it down to per minute off the floor. Which is what I did to talk myself into the Towns rebound prop earlier today. Just in case he got ruled out, I wanted to grab it early before he does get ruled out and the number jumped. I got Towns at 9.5 rebounds at plus 100 per minute with Rudy Gobert off the floor. Towns is averaging 0.36 rebounds per minute, which over 35 minutes is 11.5 rebounds. So I was like, you know what? There's a good chance that if Gobert's out, that Towns could get double-digit rebounds here tonight, which makes me like Karl-Anthony Towns a lot as well. If Rudy Gobert ends up being ruled out, we know what the ceiling can be like for him.
Sure. Agreed. 62 actual points. He's done it twice in his career.
Yeah, it's true. Triple J, he's going to take a lot of shots against Golden State. We know that. Kuzma could take a lot of shots for Washington. Again, didn't really miss a shot against the Clippers until they took him off the floor in that one. Where else are you looking at the top half of power forward?
Yeah, on the Triple J front, John, I want to play Memphis tonight. It's just really hard to until we know more data, because Golden State was so bad defensively.
Yeah.
Last month. They were, over the last 15 games, they're dead last in defense. And on the year, they're now 22nd in defense. Like, they, even with Draymond back, they have not been great defensively. So I would love to play some Triple J, truthfully, at 8,200, just knowing he basically has a team to himself. He's going to take 100 shots.
He was 4 for 20 against Golden State and still had 42 fantasy points.
It's great. I mean, that's great. That's that just shows you what the ceiling. But we talked about it on yesterday's show. That was a game where he gets the blocks, right?
Yeah.
He has the blocks, and when he does that thing where he's like a madman and he wins Defensive Player of the Year because he has 8 blocks and steals regularly, it's like, oh, he can go crazy in a game because he's not a good rebounder.
Who fouled who first, Kuminga or Jackson?
Well, the real question is, does Draymond, because they're seemingly both going to start at center, does Draymond pester, poke at Jaren Jackson enough where Jaren Jackson just starts committing dumb fouls, right? Is that a...
Starts commenting that his stat keeper's not there anymore, so his blocks are down?
Dude,
you know?
I mean, I would take offense to that.
Right.
Coming off my reigning Defensive Player of the Year award, Jalen Johnson would be another guy that I would get to. 1.08 fantasy points per minute with Trae Young on the floor and with DeAndre Hunter off the floor.
Yeah.
I would just, if you're playing Jalen Johnson as a tournament thing only, because I caution all Jalen Johnson users that have to watch Jalen Johnson guard Kevin Durant tonight.
Sure.
That is a very scary proposition, given what Kevin Durant... I mean, you said it yesterday. Kevin Durant can get to the free throw line whenever he wants. He took 12 the other night.
I kind of feel like they might stick Sadiq Bey on Kevin Durant tonight.
They could. And Jalen Johnson is just kind of roaming or guarding Jalen or Grayson Allen or something like that.
Kogi or whoever is on the floor.
Yeah, agreed.
Keegan Murray, I liked earlier today. I still kind of do like him because just the game total and the environment, and he's a shooter. Coming off 7 threes, always liable to go hit 5. He has struggled to shoot threes this year for the most part. So, he has these pop games, but then you have Sandy Aldama, who's going to be locked into some big minutes here tonight. And, more of an efficient scorer, can give you some defense. The rebounding's pretty solid for him. So you save some money. You just play Sandy Aldama here tonight and probably go in that direction.
Yeah, he's one of my first plugs tonight. Love the price. Love the minutes yesterday from Santi. 38 minutes, dude.
Yeah.
And I don't think it's going to be a ceiling like we saw in that game against Boston earlier in the year. I've alluded to that a couple times. But knowing that he has that in the bag, there was 60 fantasy point upside way back when. It's worth noting they do not have a very healthy front court. They did not play Matt Hurt yesterday.
Yeah.
They played Trey Jemison, who gave him 14 minutes. Does he?
But you commented on they could go the Jemison route as well. So
yeah, and they realistically could, but given it's a 10-day contract, I don't expect them to extend him over a Roddy or an Aldama or a Jackson or a whoever, right? So I do think Aldama's pegged for 33 plus minutes in any competitive setting here. So that would basically be the place that I'm. One of my building blocks tonight, if I'm building a core plays out, it's Santi Aldama's involved in that.
Yeah, I'm 100% in agreement with you. What are your thoughts on Jeremy Sohan? This is a guy that we kind of go back and forth with plugging into lineups, but he was really good against Orlando in a tough spot. You mentioned no Keldon. I mean, bad game against the Wizards, obviously disappointing given what could have been there. But, before that, he was pretty good with the minutes. Do you give Sohan a look tonight?
He has a high ceiling. He has a very high ceiling. There's risk with the Zion matchup, obviously, with Zion constantly attacking. But yeah, I think he's fine at 5,700 for sure.
So Faisal, supporter of bad photoshops.
Whoa. Pull it up.
I'm not pulling it up.
Pull it up.
We gotta keep moving. You can follow James on Twitter at @the_real_Grande. You can check out his horrific Photoshop skills.
Oh, got it twice.
All right, value power forwards. Naz Reid 44 to be pretty good if there's no Rudy Gobert tonight.
What do you think? Do you think Kyle Anderson? Do you think Kyle Anderson starts, or do you think Naz Reid starts?
Probably Kyle Anderson. But Orlando's going to put a big lineup on the floor.
I know, Paolo at the 4. I mean, I hate that. I'm just pointing out. I hate that we have to have that conversation. Not that I hate Kyle Anderson, but I just want Naz Reid to be freed. Like, play Naz Reid all the minutes, right? Like, he's a great player that is in an unfortunate situation, right? Like, I think Naz Reid's like an 18-10 guy if he's on a team where he's playing 30+ minutes a night.
Yeah, I agree. Where else are we going in the value tier power forward? Anybody else popping off for you?
Not really. I mean, obviously, we have to take a look at if Minnesota does start Kyle Anderson. That would obviously be a place at 3,800. John Isaac at 3,700 is fine. It is what it is. Looking through, like, you mentioned the Aaron Wiggins thing earlier.
Yeah.
He's 3,600. He started the second half of the Denver game, for what that's worth. I don't know if he parlays that into a start tonight, but it's definitely worth mentioning that they went with Kenrich Williams in the first half, and then they just played Aaron Wiggins in the second half. And Aaron Wiggins is shooting 56% from 3.
I was going to say, do you think it has more to do with them needing the offense in that game versus the defense, or?
Yeah, but like, even without, I mean, no Jokic, like,
it's only a 5-point game. I don't know.
It was a 5-point game. I mean, I think without Jalen Williams, they have harder, other than like SGA and Chet. They don't play giddy enough for long stretches of shot creation if SGA is not on the floor, or just made shots. And Isaiah Joe absence as well hurts, because he was the league's best shooter for the first month or two, and now his 15 minutes are gone. And so you need, if Aaron Wiggins is going to continue to shoot 56% from 3, I mean, that's a guy that, hey, like Mark Dagnall could be like, yo, please do that in the starting lineup tonight.
Right. All right, let's get to center, because he is one of our favorite plays of the overall day. That's Domantas Sabonis. He is $10,400. He's coming off of back-to-back 60 fantasy point games. He had a 19, 17, 13 triple-double against Miami. He had a 20-26 game against Memphis the game before that. He's got numerous 20 rebound games on his ledger this season. He is number 1 in rebound chances per game this year. He is number 10 in assist chances per game. So, and now he's got Indiana in a 248.5 game total, 249 game total, or whatever it is. Thoughts on spending up for Sabonis this evening?
Well, number 1, not an all-star. Biggest snub of the all-star snub season, in my opinion, is Domantas Sabonis. I think almost undoubtedly. Or if you want to just say De'Aaron Fox, one of the two, or Trae Young, one of those 3. I would say all 3 playing tonight. By the way, snubs across the board. It's hard not to want to get to Sabonis knowing what the ceiling is. Indiana listed Miles Turner and Jalen Smith questionable tonight, right?
Yeah.
That means their center room is Isaiah. If both those guys are ruled out, right? Isaiah Jackson, who we know is good shot blocker, very good energy guy, very foul happy.
Yeah.
And then small ball Siakam, Oscar Tshiebwe, who might even be in the G League. He's with the team right now.
Yep.
And
they signed James Johnson to a 10-day.
That's their 4 players, and now, like, that, it screams like mismatch in every instance. And not to say Turner and Jalen Smith are like elite defenders, because they're not. Indiana's a bad defensive team for a reason. Like Turner has been a good shot blocker in the past, hasn't really been that same guy this year at all. It's just hard not to want to get to Sabonis in basically every lane that you start talking about.
We got you into Prince. Don't worry about it. We'll help you out with your. We're at center. You haven't missed everything, but you've missed most of it. But that's fine. Go back 80%. And watch on replay, my friend. You got till 7:00. You can go rewind this all the way back to the beginning. JD, appreciate you on the show here, man. Thanks for tuning in. You too have a great weekend. Miles Turner officially out. Bennett Mathurin available to play.
All right, so we're perfect. We're gonna get all the news right now that we need to know.
Mm-hmm.
Because we're gonna find out.
Obviously, we're talking center, so that's big news there.
Waiting to see what the
next updates are.
Halliburton and Jalen Smith are officially game time decisions.
Super.
Per Rick Carlisle.
Okay. But definitely no Miles Turner.
Yeah, so either Jalen Smith or Isaiah Jackson or both are elite values.
Right.
Because we've Jalen Smith has been nails the last 3 out of 4 games. Nothing like live.
We appreciate you tuned in.
We appreciate the Prince. We appreciate you, buddy.
The Prince, you're a Fantasy Time subscriber. We're live to you all the time. You just got to get us in the Discord, my friend.
He can't. Dude. Have you ever looked at his screenshots that he posts? He's always on the phone. He probably realized he's on the phone. He's like, oh shoot, it's 5:53. I'm missing the show.
You could download the YouTube app and watch us live on your phone. All right. So Sabonis, obviously an elite play. Wemby, we know. Where are you on Bam here? Because there is really no better matchup for centers than Bam Adebayo. There's no Marvin Bagley. It's just Daniel Gafford. Double-digit rebounds are pretty much a lock for Bam here tonight, but everything else is kind of dipped down with the way that we've seen Jimmy Butler play. Rozier's in the mix. Hero's back in doing his thing. So, do you feel like we could have a ceiling Bam game in the matchup, or is 8,400 just too much for you?
I'm not gonna sit here and say, that's happened twice, Chris. Twice this year, where Jalen Smith has been rolled out. I feel like he's laughing because he knows every time he posts a screen.
True.
I'm not going to be the person to sit here and say, no, I'm not playing Bam because I don't think there's a ceiling. I won't do that because it's Washington. It's actually the best matchup for centers. So if you want to get to Bam, he's the 4th highest rostered center. At least that was pre-Indiana news, I imagine.
Jalen Smith got to shoot up the list here.
Yeah, and dude, so is Isaiah Jackson. Because even when Isaiah Jackson plays 15 minutes, I mean, we saw in that stretch, the 110, 112, 114 stretch where Isaiah Jackson played 17 to 20 minutes, he was 40% every one of those slates. So even if he's the backup at 3,300, he's going to be super popular. I'm basically plugging Isaiah Jackson in regardless. I'd assume Jalen Smith starts and then they go to Isaiah Jackson, but there's also a case you could play both in your lineups. Jalen Smith is forward eligible. You can do both things. Back to Bam, you could definitely get to him, but the value has obviously become super clear when it comes to the center with the potential in Indiana we have.
Yeah. I like Chet Holmgren here a lot tonight as well. $7,600. We talked about the fantasy point per minute rate there. Yes, SGA dominates, but Chet's right there with Jalen Williams off the floor is number 2. $7,600, great price point. Charlotte continues to be a terrible team against opposing centers here, so can go there. The Ethos is saying Hunter is not out. Did they just update the DeAndre Hunter news?
He is playing tomorrow.
Yeah, out expect. Yeah, this is saying he's out expected to play tomorrow. So I guess we'll see Ethos if that gets updated or not with the new status. We'll see. Trey Jamison, we just talked a little bit about that. I mean, the minutes weren't. We just talked about better value centers. So
you probably have to start. I would say that the only way we can confidently get there is if he's starting at center.
Yeah,
which is definitely not. I think they'd rather do the Jaren Jackson starting at the 5 thing than Trey Jamison.
Yeah, because they don't need to play Jamison with the team they're playing. So
no.
It's not like the Warriors are putting out a traditional center out there.
Right.
So.
Exactly.
After Chet, I know again. I really want to play Jalen Durant, but I can't. I don't think I can trust him. And I'd rather just spend the money to get the Chet Holmgren there. As we work our way down the value, again, there's Gafford. I'm actually okay playing Gafford. because there is no backup center really that they're going to trust. So more minutes should go Gafford's way tonight than in past when Bagley's been behind him. Nick Richards continues to be pretty solid play here. I don't mind Wendell Carter now. If Rudy Gobert ends up being ruled out, I think that the matchup gets a little bit better for him. Where are you for the under 6K center tier?
Not much outside of Indiana. Here's a question for you. Let's say Jalen Smith is in, Rudy Gobert is ruled out. How do you rank Jalen Smith, Naz Reid, Isaiah Jackson?
I still, no, Jalen Smith would be one. He'd still be one.
Reid 2, Jackson 3? Or
yeah,
would you
probably.
put Jackson 2?
Okay. Reid 2, Jackson 3, probably. Okay. I don't know if the minute ceiling for Isaiah Jackson would be more than the minute ceiling for Naz Reid in that situation.
I don't think so, but Isaiah Jackson also needs about 18 minutes to get 30 fantasy points.
I mean, so does Naz Reid.
No, agreed. One's 3,300, one's 4,200.
True. That's fair. If you need the money, of course, salary dependent always matters a bit here. Let's get a lineup built. You said the first guy you threw in your lineup today was Santi Aldama. I'm cool doing that direction. I'll throw Kuminga in there as well.
Jalen Smith until we're told otherwise at center.
Until otherwise told, Jalen Smith at forward, I guess.
Or center if we Sabonis, right? I mean,
I was gonna do Sabonis at center. So Sabonis, Jalen Smith, forward, $5,800. We need to get some of this Atlanta Phoenix game, probably, right?
Yeah, I'm trying to figure out. Would you want to use Chetty as another value?
I mean, there's no
or Josh Richardson at the guard.
Yeah, Richardson helps the lineup build a little bit better.
Yes, agreed.
5K shooting guard in utility. You can go Hoarder. I mean, he has been
very good. He's been very good.
51.
He correlates perfectly with Sabonis too.
Yep, and gives 5K util. Where we really can play where we want to get Gary Trent here. I am always partial to Norm Powell. Trey Murphy, Matherin. Matherin is playing.
I would say, what if Halliburton sits? How do you assess Indiana in general?
Well, if Halliburton sits, I mean, we know that Nembar is going to be point guard. So,
would you if Halliburton sits, would you rather play Matherin or McConnell at 4,800?
I mean, I feel like Matherin is the better play, but we've seen McConnell without Halliburton played. He played 8 minutes, right?
He played the 12 minutes in the start.
Yeah, so
but then he came back and the next time against Phoenix and plays 18 minutes.
We didn't mention Thad Young. Jonte Porter is out. If Jakob Poeltl doesn't come back,
Thad's a good
play. I mean, we do have the money. We could there's guys that are down here, so we can make some pivots if we need to. I'm gonna plug Matherin in here for now though, because I know he's in. So just an example on it for everybody. We got Trae Young, Kevin Huerter, Jonathan Kuminga, Santi Aldama, Domantas Sabonis, Josh Richardson, Jalen Smith, and Ben Matherin getting some exposure, some low rostered exposure to these 248 game total games because nobody's playing them for whatever reason. So playbook is out. We'll be in the Discord. We'll be back obviously Monday morning with our pre-show and live at 5 p.m. Eastern every single day here. So give us a like, subscribe, and never miss a live show. Good luck with your lineups this weekend. Get us in that Discord. We'll be around and we'll talk to you then.